and welcome to the third episode of Combat Arms in Depth. My name is Agent Psycho, aka Total Sniper 98, and I will be your host for this episode, in which we will review and cover the mechanics of the heartbeat sensor and heartbeat detector, two pieces of non-lethal equipment that can be extremely useful if used properly. So without further ado, let's get this started. Just for a little bit of background information first, the heartbeat sensor is unlocked right as you start the game and costs 400 GP a day, and the heartbeat detector, an upgraded version of the sensor, costs 800 GP a day and is unlocked at Sergeant First Class 1. Both have 90 portability, making them, needless to say, very easy to run with. Now let's talk about the nature of the heartbeat sensor and detector. These portable UAVs, in a sense, detect enemies in your vicinity while they are being used. To use them, click and hold down the left click button, and if your sensor or detector can detect enemies, it will grant you their locations as red dots in real time in your minimap in the upper right hand corner of your HUD, and also on your map if you press and hold M. The sensor and detector are restricted in their use by battery lives, which deplete very quickly if you hold down the left click, but recharge equally as fast when they are not being used. A strategy that I like to use when rocking the sensor or the detector is to continuously click instead of holding down the left click. This way enemies are presented in an almost real-time fashion, and battery life is saved to the point where if done correctly, you can use the sensor and detector virtually indefinitely. And in case you've been wondering, the battery lives on the sensor and detector are relatively the same. The sensor and detector are all-powerful. In other words, Combat Arms has no real counter or doesn't offer any real counters to these two non-lethal pieces of equipment. There is no assassin or UAV jammer perk or anything of that nature in Combat Arms. So no matter what you do, you will always be picked up by the heartbeat equipment as long as you're in range. The only thing you can hope to do is that just to hope that you're not in range of someone's heartbeat sensor or detector. But because so few people use it, you almost never have to worry about people running around with these. And when you do, people will most likely forget that a heartbeat sensor or detector even exists and call you a jammer. Now let us discuss the key difference between the sensor and the detector. The heartbeat sensor is manufactured strictly for personal use. In other words, only you can use it and receive the benefits gained from the heartbeat sensor, or using the heartbeat sensor rather. However, the heartbeat detector relays enemy positions to everyone on your team, not just yourself, making the heartbeat detector that much more potent, because now everyone on your team who is near you and is paying attention to the minimap will also be able to know enemy positions as well. Due to their nature, the sensor and detector are extremely useful for single life objective game types or other game modes like Search and Destroy and Elimination Pro, but the detector is exponentially more useful if you know that your team is aware that you have a detector and are watching their minimaps. By now, some of you may be wondering what the ranges on the sensor and detector are. Obviously, the range that really limits your sensors or detectors' detection capabilities is your minimap, and if you're playing on big maps, sometimes the map when you press M may be too big for you to accurately locate your enemies if they're within range. So for now, just assume that the effective ranges at which your sensor or detector can locate enemies are the boundaries of your minimap. And on a side note, I was planning to test the range on the heartbeat detector because, as you guys have already know by now, because I just told you, the detector is able to relay enemy information to your teammates, and I was about to test the range on the detector because I was thinking maybe, that the detector's range might actually be bigger than what your minimap can actually see, so maybe you can use it and maybe your teammates can also see enemies that are outside your own minimap. But I decided against it because, in all honesty, no one really uses heartbeat sensors or heartbeat detectors, and no one really pays attention to the minimaps anyway, so I kind of decided against it. Just so for now, just assume that the range is the boundaries of your minimap. Another thing I must caution you about is the fact that although the sensor and detector are all powerful, this does not mean that it is super easy to pick people off. Because the sensor and detector don't give away enemy positions as, say, a satellite scanner would, you must know the terrain and geography of the maps on which you use this sensor or detector. This in itself takes skill, brain power, and concentration to fulfill, much more concentration oriented than simply running out in the open and hoping to shoot anyone who just pops out at you. For example, you may see a red dot right next to you, and you may think there's an enemy just hiding just around the corner, but when you pop out to investigate, that the enemy isn't there, and instead you hear him clumping around in the levels above you, for example. That is because, in case you didn't realize this by now, the sensor and detector pick up enemy locations in a bird's eye view, just like UAVs in Call of Duty. This means that it is entirely up to you to be able to discern where enemies are in order to hunt them down. Another disadvantage that the sensor and detector have is their draw times. The sensor's draw time isn't too bad, but the detector's draw time is pretty bad in comparison. While you can take out frags and other equipment in less than half a second usually, the sensor takes about a second and a half to take out, and the detector takes a whopping 3 seconds to ready. Just having these equipments can pose a danger in themselves if you take them out the wrong times. So in that case, make sure that you are in a secure position where enemies probably won't be able to find you immediately when using a sensor or detector. Otherwise, consider yourself boned. In addition, map knowledge is key in combat arms. So key, in fact, that knowledge of high traffic areas of maps and the general map sense will erode the overall usefulness of the heartbeat sensor and detector. So for me, for example, personally, I know the map Oil Rig very well, extremely well, in fact. I'm not trying to brag here. When I try to use the sensor or detector on that map, I don't do as well if I wasn't using them at all. In that case, in my example anyway, the sensor or detector actually restricts me and my performance, exactly the opposite of what the sensor or detector is intended to do. However, in overall usefulness, the sensor and detector are nonetheless extremely powerful tools in the game. If used correctly, these portable UAVs will make the enemy team scream hacks and shams at you for the rest of the game, provided that you don't get rage kicked by then. Well guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode and reviews on the heartbeat sensor and detector. My name is Asian Psycho, aka ToeSniper98, and I hope that you have found this episode useful. In the next episode, or in the next in-depth episode, I will begin to cover each of the different gun types found in combat arms, starting with assault rifles. And for the next family of reviews, I will review the Chris family, or otherwise known as the Vector series, as displayed in Modern Warfare 2, as usual going in increasing rank progression. Thank you for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the coming episodes. ゆっくりしてってね。